We're going to talk about a bit of theory today because we're kind of halfway through in a way. I think this is the 4th week. We've dealt with breathing abdominally, breathing with our chest. So we're kind of separating the two areas of our breathing. And then we applied that to a seated practice, which pretty much anyone who can sit up can do. And we talked about the breathing bracketing the movement. So you start breathing before you start moving, and then you stop moving before you stop breathing. And we've been talking a lot about using pelvis and, to a lesser degree, our collarbone and shoulders, but we have been working on our chest as well, as a reference point for our symmetry. So probably from the physical standpoint, that's the most important takeaway for doing this as an amputee, whether you're like just a casual amputee like me who's just happened to have lost a foot, bilateral amputee like Qua, whatever. The important takeaway is to use our pelvis, our collarbone, and some sense of straightness in our spine as our reference point. Over time, that will become more habitual for you and a lot easier. In fact, you find yourself sitting in a chair, and if you're not completely even, it sort of annoys you when you fix it all up. But clearly, if you're missing feedback from your feet or from your arms, then you need a different reference point. So we worked on that, and we've worked on the idea of tracking the breath straight. And if you do that lying down, in fact, anytime you do it, you're probably finding that you're kind of adjusting little bits and pieces all the time. The idea is really get a focus on that central point here. And it's kind of a feeling of space. In the center somewhere is this space where you put your mind. And similarly in your chest. And if we can feel the breath moving in a straight line, you will find yourself lining up your back and adjusting for the differences in the muscles side to side just by virtue of the breathing. We can take that breathing and we can make it as gentle or as much of a workout as we want. I can describe a way for you to do that breathing that will leave you sweating. No problem whatsoever. So they're important skills. They're important skills for anyone. They're extra important for us because they're giving us awareness of our torso and control over it. And anyone who's done any fitness, let alone what we're trying to do, knows that you getting your core strong is the beginning of any serious piece of physical ability. Yeah? In fact, before I discuss, get my fingers pointed in the right direction, this guy, which is the direction we're headed in, I might show you a picture, which will take me, if I can find it. The point is just to show you guys something I did, that really does require some good control and some good symmetry. He says, stalling for time while looking for the picture. Yoga pictures, me, oops. Didn't dawn on me to show you this until I started talking about symmetry and core control. Let's see. 1,000 pictures of me standing on my head. They were, when I started doing this, the way I introduced myself on Facebook and stuff was to put me doing a headstand with a prosthesis on, and then I wrote an article like, losing your leg can turn your life upside down. And I got a fair bit of attention out of it, so it achieved the purpose. We're getting somewhere now. Where does S come in the alphabet? Down here. Past my stepdaughter. And there's me. Okay, so 1 second. I hope this is useful. We will add an image. Okay. Should have thought of this before, but you can't have everything. Right. So
There
you
you
can
are.
see this picture of me, and it looks very athletic and all the rest of it. I'll probably make it a little bit bigger. Can you see that okay? How about I make it bigger? I'll get rid of myself for a minute.
Mm-hmm.
There we go. That'll do. So the point is, if you're fit, Qua, you're a bit fit. You're pretty fit, Daryl. Splitting a whole bunch of wood by swinging a splitter when one of your legs is expensive and the other one's one of these cheapo biological jobbies is a seriously asymmetrical thing to do. And you can very quickly, doing this, which I have to do for the heating, by the way. This is the only heating we've got. It's the right price, though. It's free. If you do that for very long and you haven't got control of your core and control of the relationship between your hips to your spine, you're going to really hurt yourself. You'll get a sore back in like half a dozen swings. And it's by, not the most athletic thing any amputee's done. We can all do all sorts of stuff. We're very clever people. But the real issue is how long can we do it for? And if we continually move in ways which are seriously asymmetrical, we're going to wear out by the time you're 70 chasing those kids around. So anyway, we've dealt with that, and that was a nice bit of a demo. And I have found for myself the most useful practice I do is the one that you are seeing there. It's a lying twist, and it's going to take some time to develop, right? I demoed it for the last class, but the room here isn't really ideal for me stretching out that much, so a picture is just as good. I find that this particular asana, which is the center point of my actual daily practice, is the most important thing I do. And when I do a day, where I forget doing this, just getting around the place and doing all the things that I do is much more difficult. You can see from the picture, it's a pretty serious twist. You're lying on the floor, looking one direction, and your toes in the hand in the other side. It's stretching right through the area that we are using to stand, to walk, and to drive ourselves. And inevitably, whether you got like one expensive leg or like Qua, flash guy that he is, 2 expensive legs, right? They're not going to be used the same. Qua, your legs aren't the same length. Yeah, very flash. So inevitably there will be some differences. This posture works right through the muscles and the skeletal structure that we use all the time when we're walking, getting around, doing our normal thing. And as long as you approach it properly and don't hurt yourself with it, it relieves a lot of tension in the lower back that we tend to accumulate. Right? When you are walking around without 2 biological legs, a lot of your drive is going to come from your lower back. It has to. You have to have a stator muscle to move against, yeah? And so when we're doing all this stuff to get this leg, my expensive short leg, working, we've got to have some muscles that are solid for the contracting muscles to move against, and they will tend to be in your lower back. And quite frequently, people who are just getting started with a prosthesis with perhaps not a lot of help or whatever, they'll often get sciatica or back pain simply because they're working one side so much harder than the other. So this is a place we're going to. But what I did promise you folks is that we are going to do like real traditional yoga. It's not a cheap version of the exercise. And my goal for everybody is that you have enough understanding of the principles that you can adapt any practice you need to yourself. You don't need me. You don't need anyone. You don't need to go to a class. You've got enough understanding to use these principles to create and maintain a practice for yourself. Then, if I do that, I've done a good job. So, we've talked about a whole bunch of stuff. There is a concept in yoga, these 3 states of matter. Everything that's in the material world is thought to be in a combination of 3 states. They are Sanskrit names: Rajas, Sattva, and Tamas. Rajas is a state of high energy, excitement, anger, fight, get a lot done, blah, blah, blah. Tamas is physical, heavy, tired, lazy, focused on food and sex. And tamas is a really good state to be in, like sleepy, heavy, tired, not interested in doing much when you want to go to sleep. It's a pretty poor state to be in when you've got to go and do a whole lot of things in the day. And sattva is really the balance between the two. Anyone familiar with Taoist Chinese thinking is familiar with the Taijitsu, the yin-yang symbol? Yep. So yang is really just a Chinese version of Rajas, yin, tamas. And in the traditional Taijitsu, there is a red line between the black side and the white side. That's where we're supposed to be. That represents this balance point. So sattva is light, it's pure, and it's relaxed and balanced. Now, that's the ideal state, apparently. Unless, of course, you want to go to sleep or you're getting into a fight. Then we do use these other things. Have you ever seen the old Japanese show Monkey? You seen Monkey? Qua? Cool. 3 people have seen Monkey. So, Monkey is Rajas. Pigsy is Tamas. And Sandy is Sattva. And that whole story can be represented. You've seen this mudra. You've seen this shape that people make when they're meditating. Well, it helps if you know what it means when you do it. So these 3 fingers, if one moves, the others tend to move. So they represent these 3 gunas, right? Monkey, Sandy, Pigsy. This finger is much more independent. So this is you. This is yourself. That is like Tripitaka. This finger is the thumb is the most independent. This represents the divine. In the case of the monkey story, this represents Buddha. So doing this represents leaving the gunas and joining with the divine. That's the point of it. So if we're going to adapt all of this groovy yoga stuff to our own purpose, which, as I said, is my goal for you, then it's important to be able to look at your state. Fairly simple analysis. Am I too revved up? Am I not revved up enough? Have I got any motivation whatsoever? There's an interesting thing about this sattva part of the deal. If you remember Sandy, he was really cool and he was always looking after Tripitaka, and he was completely useless by himself. He couldn't do anything. He never does anything. But in conjunction with Pigsy and Monkey, they can do a lot. So Sattva's good unless you need to actually do something. So the point is, you wake up in the morning. Qua, you did a practice this morning. And, you're feeling a bit sleepy, etc., etc. So your practice might be a little bit more energetic. You'll certainly do a physical sort of practice. That's really appropriate for the morning. Yeah. And you'll stretch all the bits and pieces that need some stretching. And you'll do a bit of breathing and go about your day. That will be a good start to the day. You're lifting your energy with all that physical sort of movement. And get a bit balanced and off you go. You get to the end of the day and you might be like Daryl, who never shuts up. He's just always on the go. And you need to sleep. Now you need to be able to change your state to be a bit more tamasic, a bit more like Pigsy. Now, that's where this long exhalation is very useful. So what would you do as a practice at night? You might do a few very gentle asana, like the two you've learned. And then more emphasis on the meditation, because that's going to calm you down more. So understanding that we're balancing between these fundamentally two states and trying to arrive at one in the middle is really important for understanding how all the elements of yoga were developed, because these were the ideas that were in the minds of the people who developed this stuff. I didn't make it up. These are fundamental ideas. So, if you're looking at this Nadi Shodhana practice, ideally it's supposed to leave us in a nice, light state of mind, like feeling like you've washed your brain out, you're not stressed, you're not feeling dopey, you're ready to go on and have a pretty focused sort of approach to the day. Having said all that, what's your experience been so far?
At night, I must admit, I do the shoulder exercises because I go to sleep about 12. I do a lot of the shoulder exercises and that at night. I try to do it in the morning as well, but at night I have to do that. Just for the body.
Do you have some idea of why you need to do that at night, what you're feeling? Or is it just following your intuition, like, I need to move these things?
Yeah, I think because in the morning, if I'm going to exercise, it's got to be in the morning, like early in the morning, because by the time I get during the day, I just tire out. And by the time I get to 11 o'clock at night, 11 o'clock at night, I just need to relax. I just need to, calm the body down because I don't sleep well. So I just need to do something.
So you find the shoulder thing helps at night?
Oh, definitely, yeah. And just lying down forward sort of thing and just my head on my hands, just like that sort of thing. Yeah, it just helps my back. And that exercise you've got up there, I do that all the time. I find it really comfy to do. I do it it's comfortable to me.
That's great, because you would have been like probably the person I would be concerned about the most, simply because of your age. A lot of people your age simply don't have the flexibility in their lower back to do that. So if you're able to do that, that's brilliant. That's absolutely brilliant. And that's great for everybody because we can move on without the thought of breaking Janine, which wouldn't be very good.
Yeah, I tend to have a lot of flexibility. Yeah, cool. Like I do a lot of stretching and that, where I need more strength as well, but I don't have a lot of strength in my arms, or because I'm only kind of little too, I guess. But yeah, I don't tend to have a lot of strength in my upper body.
So to develop strength, the smart thing there to do is to hold postures for a breath. So, for example, if you're doing Cobra pose, Bhujangasana, hold being up for a breath. And then on your next exhalation, go down. And with any of the movements we've made, if you want to increase strength, slow them down and hold them in their extended position for a breath. When I was learning Tai Chi in China at the temple that I'm associated with, we learnt a normal sort of process, a normal routine. And then to get really strong and really fast, oddly enough, the abbot made us slow down till it took 4 times as long. And it was so hard to do, really slowly. But you do develop a lot of strength, you develop a lot of awareness of your movement, and so when you need to move quickly, your body actually has got a much better idea of what it's doing. So to deal with strength, hold the postures, and I will take that on board and consider strength building stuff for each asana as we go, as it relates to you.
Because I find too, if I'm doing gym work, like exercise classes, the slower the movement and the longer is better because you're concentrating more on what you're doing. So if you're doing, say, cardio, which I don't like, you're going so fast you're not really concentrating on the right movement or how you're doing it.
Yep. Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So
cool.
Anyway.
So, Kwa,
there you go.
How did you go with that Nadi Shodhana exercise? Like its impact, its result for you?
Because since we did it on Tuesday, at first, like, when I was breathing, like, uneven because, and whatnot, but this morning was better. I said it was flowing in and out, but I still had a runny nose, but it was flowing in and out. In terms of, in fact, I'm not too sure if I thought it specifically with that.
Sure.
Maybe, yeah.
So you did that at the end of your practice?
Yeah, I did that.
How did you feel at the end of your practice? Forget the specifics.
Good, I guess. Good. Well, I did it at the gym because I had to be at the gym, so I was kind of rushing it because I had a webinar on 8:30, and I got to the gym around 8:05, so I set it up for 8:10. I did roughly 15 minutes. I had meditation music playing, so I was trying to get inside.
Yeah, cool. And that's going to happen. You know, the fact that you do it under all circumstances will, over time, increase its effectiveness for you and your ability to maintain the discipline. And that's the biggest deal. So, you know, if we want to step into the next yoga principle, which I'll be pretty quick about, your mind doesn't want to change. And I was a parish priest for 10 years, by the way. And I learnt from a really smart old priest that probably one of the most important lessons of dealing with people that I've ever learned. And he quite simply said, Mark, people need to know they're alive more than they need to enjoy it. And if you've associated yourself with a whole bunch of thoughts and practices that's what you identify with, regardless of whether they're helpful or not helpful, it's going to be really hard to change them. And so any amount of discipline that we can apply to ourselves without bashing ourselves up, to do the practice, to do the meditation, all of which change our state of mind, the more we do that, the better off we're going to be. Don't be surprised if you feel a bit of resistance, you know, you're feeling really crappy, and the most important thing you can do is you practice, and wild horses couldn't drag you to do it because your mind resists. And it's important your mind should resist. If your mind changed every time there was a possibility of change, you wouldn't get much done, would you? the reality is that we just need to make sure we can change it when we need to. And that can be a bit of a challenge. Anyway, good that you did it. So maybe what I will do, you got those ideas. The most important ideas from today are these 3 states. So just think of Tripitaka, that's you, going through the journey of life, and Monkey, Pigsy and Sandy are your helpers. And if you want to remind yourself with the mudra, these 3 fingers are Monkey, Pigsy and Sandy. This is you. And this is whatever you conceive of the divine to be. In this story, it's Buddha. Right? So this is leaving the Gunas and joining with Buddha. That's what the mudra means. So what I might do, if you've got all that on board, how are we going for time? Because I usually go on and on and on. All right. Because Janine's pretty comfortable with this particular twist, I might just get a start on it so that when we tackle it seriously next week, you've got some things to think about and you've got some things to talk to me about. So what I want you to do, I'm going to first of all show you, what I want you to do is look at my hips, especially Kwa, because this is where we're going to be clever. You can see in the picture that it's done, body's in the right position when you're holding your big toe in your hand. It isn't much bloody help if you don't have a big toe. So what we need to do...
Hold on a minute.
Hey?
Oh, sorry, I was talking to my hubby.
So what we need...
He didn't realise.
What we need to do is exactly the same in principle as we did with just sitting. So we were sitting and we were going, what are we doing with our pelvis? All right? So now with the twist, we're still going to ask the same question. What are we going to do with it? And fundamentally what we want when we get to the final posture is for whatever's remaining of our legs to be pointed towards our hand and our pelvis to be 90 degrees to the floor. So if you're a bit stiff, and I haven't done this today precisely so I could show you something, because we're very fortunate, Janine's really flexible, but you 2 guys might not be. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do 3 movements to one side. What I'm going to do, I'm going to let my knees go down as I exhale. Then I'm going to leave them there. You will see when I breathe, there's naturally going to be some extra stretch because I'm just filling this part of my body up. When I exhale, the natural relaxation of the exhalation will allow me to extend the stretch a bit more. Now, normally if I've had a big day working physically, it might take me 3 times before I've got to the point where I can comfortably do the final posture, which is over there. So just have a watch and we can talk about it and we can think about it over the weekend and get ready for doing this seriously next week, because this is really where the rubber hits the road. So, watch. I don't need a mat. How much of it can you see? Oh, you can see enough. You can see my hips. I don't need that. So, my arms are out. You want me to get rid of the picture?
Yeah.
All very high tech and professional.
You look at it.
Move to the bottom. There we go. Right. Get rid of keyboard. So, you really need to be watching this bit of me. You don't need to worry about legs. They're negotiable. So, breathe in. Breathing out. I'm going to look at this side. effectively, I'm looking at my hand. As I exhale, I'm just going to bring my knees up. So you've done this one up and us. Inhale. And exhale. I'm going to lift my pelvis up a bit as well as go to the side. Now that's as far as it goes without any effort. So I'll stay here for a breath. Start to inhale. And return to the side. And I'll do one more so everyone can see. Inhale. Begin exhaling. Again, that's as far as I can go without forcing. So I'll stay and consciously relax as I exhale. And the third one. Okay. So I wasn't watching, but you were. What did you notice? Did I do it right?
Yeah, your hip stayed on the your hip stayed there. I noticed, like on the floor sort of thing. Do you know when you turned, you kept the hip on to the floor? That's what I noticed.
Yep, so you definitely want your hip joint on the floor. You notice how holding for a breath was actually the thing that helped me get the extra movement. That's like the really important takeaway. If you force yourself, you're only going to hurt yourself. And I see yoga injuries all day long when I look at the various yoga press and yoga pages. And it's because people see this final form and no one's told them how to get there safely. So, you've got the weight of your legs. Regardless of how much you've got, they've got some weight. You've got them as far as you can go comfortably. Then you take a breath. The inhalation will stretch you a bit more, and the exhalation, with the weight of your legs, will give you that bit more extension. It's also, you're going to have to, if you're not comfortable with this, you're going to have to control that relaxation. This is a fairly serious stretch. And being able to control that exhalation, because you've learned to control your breath, you can control the relaxation enough to get that bit extra stretch without taking yourself into a place where you're causing sharp pain. You get a contraction. It's not going to help you with the posture, and that's when you get an injury. When you get a sharp muscle contraction to protect an area that's in pain. And I didn't learn that from people. I learned that from training horses, by the way. I learned so much about yoga from horses. It's not funny. That's another conversation. So doing that posture on both sides, more on the side that is stiffer, is for me one of the most important things I do each day. And if we can get that happening, then we can really start to do some serious yoga. But if I don't take it to that point, and we might need to adapt, find different twists for different people. But as long as we're getting this area of ourselves, if we're lower limb amputees, sorted out and symmetrical every day, we are going to walk better, our back is going to last longer, and generally life's going to be good. Well, better anyway. So, do you want to have a go at that while I watch you before we knock off, or do you want to practice on your own? Have a go.
I'll have a go.
Have a go.
Okay, I'll move on to the floor.
I'm particularly interested in you, Kwa, because I want to make sure that I'm helping you do it right.
Yeah.
Yep. So it's when you bring your knees up, good, and then bend your knee if you can at all. And on the exhale, take your leg over to the side, but also bring your legs up so that you're curling your back. That's good, Daryl. Yep. And then hold it for a breath, unless it's painful. And really relax on that exhalation. Keep your shoulder on both shoulders on the floor if you can. And then with the inhalation, come up to the center. Cool. And then again, take a breath while your legs are straight up like that. And with the exhalation, you want to roll your pelvis up and take your knees down. Relax as they go down. And when you're as far as you can, breathe in. Breathe out. Let the weight carry you. And then inhale and come back to the center. Cool. You've got that pretty right. Okay, legs down. Daryl, you've got the rounding of your back really, really well. So the idea is it's a stretch for our whole back, not a twist for our lumbar spine. So the idea when you bring your knees up is to roll your pelvis back so that it's lifted up a bit when you go over to the side. So the twist is in your whole spine. It's not concentrated purely in your lower back. Did that make sense? Cool. Yep. If you have a look at Daryl, right, it's just a good example. It's a bit hard to see when he's lying down, but you can see that when he...
Oh, there he is.
You can see that. Would you mind just doing that again, Daryl? So you can see that there's some flex. Came a bit later in that bend, but his back is arched. It's not like he's not turning a straight plank. His back is arched. And he's the easiest one to see, so I can pick him for an example. Okay. Now, we can quit doing that and chat about it. By the way, in terms of balance, that's a forward bend. And it's an asymmetrical forward bend. So from what we've learnt, we know the smart thing to do after that will be a symmetrical forward bend, a straight forward bend, and after that, a back bend. Okay? So if we do that, warm up, do the two postures that you learnt last week. Start on that one. Start with the idea of 6 per side, right? And then adjust it for which side's stiffer, has a bit more, which side's really flexible, has a bit less, okay?
Sorry. So with what we were just doing then, do you turn your head to the opposite side? Do you know what I'm saying? If you're lying down, do you put turn your head to the opposite side to what you're bending?
So my arm's like that. I'm like that. My legs are going that way. Yep. It'd be easier if I wasn't sitting cross-legged.
Okay,
So you look there, your legs going that way. So the idea is we have a twist from the very top of our spine all the way through to the bottom. The things that keep it, the things that make sure we're doing it correctly are that our shoulders are on the ground as much as possible. Initially, they might lift a bit. That's okay. But we're not doing ourselves any favour if shoulders 6 inches off the ground. So in our minds, shoulders are on the ground and we have lifted up like that and then twisted over. We're not just cranking our lower back. Yeah.
I feel tightness in my upper back.
Absolutely, you will. Bloke with as much upper body muscles as you've got, that's exactly what you will find. And so do I. Right? The twist for me is through here. That's the part I'm really working on. And in my shoulders. Right?
Yep.
So it's not just about pressure on the lower back, but that's what we can injure the most easily. So that's what I talk about the most. But in any case, that tight muscle, feeling that you're having, because that's what you're stretching, that's what to focus on relaxing when you're holding it for a breath. So you're down there, you're holding it for a breath, and that's what you really want to focus on letting go as much as it's comfortable. When you've done that, please pay attention. Start breathing before you start moving. It is quite easy to hurt yourself if you just jerk yourself up, having got that extra piece of extension. So it's taken you a breath to get into it. Give yourself the beginning of a breath, body starting to move before you come out of it. Okay?
Yeah, I noticed when I was in the hold the breath, like my muscles started to relax a bit. I was more mindful rather than jerking it off straight away, or like moving sudden movements. I let the muscle relax.
Yes.
And now I take the breath and then further extend.
Perfect.
Where I can tell that it is stretching.
That's really encouraging for me to hear, because that's exactly right. It's that awareness of relaxation and the awareness of when it's too much, when it stops being relaxation. That's clearly where you stop. So everything you said's great. How'd you find that, Janine?
Yeah, good.
Cool.
Yeah.
Where do you find the stretch? Or what do you find in that process that you notice the most?
Just holding. Like, I'm a big believer in holding stretches. Like, as long as they don't hurt, obviously. And just relaxing in a stretch, like, and breathing. Like, I find it. The more you breathe in a stretch, the more relaxed you are, sort of thing. And but sort of.
So
thing.
how do you find keeping your shoulders on the floor when your hips are going over? Is that okay for you?
I'm fine. Yeah, I'm okay with that.
Because
but I've noticed, like, ever since I've been doing this, I'm so concentrating on being balanced, like being sort of even, totally. Like, even when I'm just lying in bed or lying down like this, I'm sort of like central,
that's
sort
great.
of thing. I'm just doing it all the time now. It's like
terrific.
Yeah.
Because you're missing one leg, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I'm the lower leg and then half my foot.
Righto. So
on the other foot.
Every move you make is inherently asymmetrical. So having that consciousness as a general corrective is really important. And so that's just great news to me. I'm really... And you switched on enough to make use of it. I mean, I really like this group because everyone's sort of a bit switched on. Everyone in both groups is switched on, but frequently if you're doing just a standard yoga class, people have got like a picture in their mind of the posture, and all of these subtleties that go along with it escape them. And when you've been doing this for 30 years, that's really frustrating. So this is really, I'm really, really pleased with the group. You guys are fantastic. So, Daryl, what was your experience of that? You probably, got the most martial arts in you. You should have some idea of the movements. What was your experience?
Actually, it's probably better for me. Historically, I probably wouldn't have curled as much on the turn. So I did find I didn't have the pressure in my lower back that I'd had before by curling that little bit more. And as you pointed out, I consciously curled that hip, rocking from the slight posture of the pelvis on the mat and that little arch in your lower back, and then forcing that up to flatten out the back and then rolling over to get a consistent feel. I got a fairly uniform twist feel through my back, so I didn't have any points of particular disruption or interest in all of that. For me, I've got a damaged front shoulder, but it wasn't too bad either. I always have trouble getting shoulders perfectly flat, but otherwise I was happy with that.
You'll find this very helpful for the shoulders thing too. And you've got enough insight to work one side and the other and all the rest of it, but it really is particularly good for that. And I think you can see why, for me, to make sure I'm starting the day nice and straight and even, this is such an important part of the practice. The other part of my practice, which is really important, is a headstand, and we'll deal with that later. You don't have to do them, but they are very, very powerful things, as long as your head's straight. So anyway, I reckon that's pretty much covered enough territory to keep everybody entertained. Any questions or comments? Blah, blah, blah.
Oh, thank you.
Great. I'm really interested in your feedback from this choir, because being a bilateral, is that the right language, amputee, you're having experiences I've never had. And when we come to the full extension of this, where I've still got one toe to hold in my hand and I can keep my knees together so I can keep the posture right, I really want to make sure that we've got the same degree of extension and work out what's the right way for you, because that's going to be relevant to a whole lot of people.
I guess when it comes to that, like I can put my legs on.
That might help. That's something we'll deal with. Fiddle with it over the weekend or whatever and see what the difference is. Generally, my rule of thumb is I don't use a prosthesis when I'm practicing unless I need to. Clearly, for standing postures, it's very handy. Similarly for you. For this, having your legs on might be exactly what you need. So please let me know.
You got a bruise there, have you?
Yeah, it looks red.
You're bashing yourself up.
Looks red. Now what I eat.
I'm going to have a chat to you guys about this osteo-integration stuff. I'm seeing a lot of people with it. But anyway, we can discuss that later. You look pretty... Yeah, I don't know. I'm thinking of rolling over in bed and kicking the wife with one of those things sticking out my leg. Might not be too flash. Might be a good way to lose friends. Anyway, as usual, ask me anything you want in email. Don't hurt yourselves. And the most important thing you can do for yourself is do some practice every day. Doesn't have to be exhaustive, but some practice every day is a whole hell of a lot better than a lot of practice every so often, both mentally and physically. So I'll leave you with that. Thanks heaps, blah, blah, blah. And I will see you all next Tuesday when we're going to really look at that, the balance to it, and extend it as much as we can.